Hey everyone, it's the Snaky back again with another video, and we're here. We're in the now. We've got the boxing game that we wanted, or have we? Well, we've got Undisputed, which is a early access boxing title, and you've probably been wondering why I've been so suspiciously quiet about this. I've been in both the public betas. I played the first one a lot more than I did the second one, unfortunately, because the second one was a lot better, but didn't have a lot of time to play it. And I want to give you my thoughts today on the game. I apologise in advance for any loud popping or banging outside from the exhaust, because there is a rally happening in my area at the moment. So yeah, that's something that's happening. So you'll just have to bear with me on that regard. If you hear any noises, this microphone is pretty sensitive. But anyways, what are my opinions on this game? And I suppose what is the kind of the backstory to Fight Night? Well, I'm a massive Fight Night fan, massive boxing fan, as everybody knows from this channel. But this game really is almost like a dream scenario for me on paper, because it's the first proper boxing game we've got to play with licensed boxers in a very, very long time, and also has a current crop of heavyweights and boxers that Fight Night Champion either didn't include or at the time didn't have. So what are my opinions on it? And well guys, it's a mixed bag here, to be honest with you, in my opinion. First of all, we have to understand that this isn't a fully finished game. This is an early access title, and that's more and more common these days, because you can wheel out your game very early and then have people essentially beta test it and still pay you money. I paid €30 for this game, and to be honest with you, I don't mind giving the developers that, because I'm hoping that they're going to be able to improve on the game as time goes on. However, it is a mixed bag, and especially as someone coming from a Fight Night game, I think that people here are going to be sorely disappointed, because this is a boxing simulation game, and it's a lot more tactical than Fight Night Champion was, and any of the Fight Night games that came previous. So there's one of those cars I was talking about. So I wrote down some points here. This is some gameplay that I have here of the dream matchup that I'm hoping happens this year between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. And before I suppose to start talking about the actual gameplay, I suppose we got to talk about the obvious, I don't want to say elephant in the room, but the thing that strikes me most when we load up the game first, and that is the visuals. These player models are gorgeous, and also the way that the characters move around and their mannerisms are also fantastic. More so with some fighters than others. I want to give you the example of Fury here, who's, as anyone again who watches this channel regularly knows, is my guy, my all-time favourite. The mannerisms that they've gotten down with Fury is unbelievable. The way he moves around, you can even just see right there, he just fixed his shorts, which is something that he does and has done since he started boxing first. It's one of the things that anyone that watches Fury regularly knows. He has this habit of pulling up his shorts, because he has got quite a large mid section there. So that's something that he does, and it's little details like that that are really going to put a smile on the face of boxing fans. The gameplay is highly simulation based, so this is not a game you're going to go in and start button mashing. You will not have any success at all doing that with Undisputed. Let me just get that clear from the outset. When you fired up Fight Night Champion, you could easily get away with cheesing and spamming when the game came out first with jabs and hooks, and there was a lot more responsiveness to the control system. So that's the first point that I want to cover here. And that's the kind of the responsiveness of the controls. Now, I find that, and I'm playing on, by the way, I'm playing on a pretty high-end rig. I've got a 5800 X3D, and I've got a 6800 XT, both of which were recently upgraded, 16 gigs of RAM. So, it's a pretty decent system, and I'm playing this on ultra settings, and I'm capped at 140 frames because I have VSync on. I know Yock VSync, but I just like the smoothness of the image, and it doesn't really harm the inputs, because I've tested it without VSync on. So people are going to start saying, "Oh, it's VSync that's causing the problems." It isn't VSync. It's exactly the same when I don't have VSync on. But the point I'm trying to make here is the dropped inputs and sluggishness of the controls aren't to do with the PC that you're playing on, if that's the first thing that you're thinking of when you start playing the game first. But in reality, it's actually just the game itself. I find that the controls, probably because it's more simulation based, there is more of a tendency for they're not to be as responsive. It's really hard to explain unless you're playing the game. You have to be a lot more purposeful with your inputs. When we actually talking about the analog full spectrum punch control, whatever you want to call it, that's, I think, where some of the problems arise. I've had much better success using the buttons on the Xbox controller than actually using the analog stick. Now, I always used X and Y for jab and straight right hand anyways, and then used the analog for left and right hooks. But it is something that you're going to have to kind of get used to, and whether this is going to change over time, or maybe it's just my muscle memory and how I'm used to playing Fight Night Champion, that could be, you know, more of the issue, to be honest with you. But it's just so it's something that I think needs to be spoken about. You will have to take a long time to kind of move yourself away from that Fight Night style where, you know, you press the jab button, you instantaneously have a jab, even with slower boxers. So that's a major point. Some of the other things that I noticed is stamina management in this game. The CPU tends to body punch a lot, and the CPU is quite good at it. The computer controlled character is quite good at it. So you really have to get to grips with the body game. And going with the body game, you have to also remember to defend your own body, and that has changed completely because in the controller now, you don't have the auto block. You actually have to block your head and your body. So you use the right trigger to block, and then you use the left bumper or press down on the right analog stick to defend your body. So you have to kind of, like in Fight Night Round 4, have to defend each part of your body, which isn't a major deal. But again, when you're playing Fight Night Champion for so long, you do have to remember to do that. So it's something that you have to consider. But that's something you're going to get used to there. And, you know, along with it being much different to Fight Night, you know, it is quite hard to win rounds. You do have to be very, very tactical. I found that with certain boxes, I found it really, really difficult to win rounds. And that's because the computer is really good at counterpunching. Now, I'm using this fight here with Fury and Usyk, and this is me after playing for a good few quick fights. So I've gotten more used to the controls. But even at this, if you take your kind of eye off the ball for a minute, the PC really, or the computer control character, Usyk in this case here, really will punish you. So you have to be on top of your game at all times, and you have to be watching for, you know, subtle movements and try and, I suppose, anticipate what the opponent is going to do. The AI is definitely, in a lot of ways, smarter than the AI in Fight Night, and they will go for counter punches a lot more often. That wasn't something that the computer did very often in Fight Night Champion, I found. So it is harder to win rounds. That sounds like a pretty ridiculous thing to say, but you do really have to box very, very tactically in this. Winging big power punches like you can see me doing there, it just isn't going to work. And so you do have to fight. You got to fight the boxers fight really for this. I'm just reading off my notes here as I'm going. Another problem that I have with the game is the head movement. So there's two types of head movement. You've got your sway, which is you moving your upper body, and I'm not using it a lot here in the later rounds. You can see me doing a little bit of it there, but what I was doing there was kind of slipping. So swaying is done by holding down the left trigger and moving the left analog like in Fight Night Champion. However, if you want to do kind of more dramatic side-to-side movements, so slipping punches, you have to actually click down on the analog stick and then move it up or down or forward and back, depending on what way you want to slip. And this really is tricky to do. Like, you kind of feel like you're nearly breaking your controller every time you're doing it. I mean, I can't imagine the analog sticks on an undisputed player's controller lasting very long, to be honest with you. It is a really, really difficult maneuver, and you do have to get used to doing it. And I haven't been using it that much at the moment, so I really need to practice that a bit more. So you need to bear that in mind, that there are two types of body movement in this, not just the standard pull down the left trigger and move the analog like in Fight Night. So, you know, you gotta remember that. Other points that I want to make in terms of, you know, when the gameplay is flowing, it does feel good. There are times where when you're boxing on the outside of Fury here, you can catch your opponent coming in with a jab and a straight right hand. That's kind of how I used to play Fight Night. I was an outside fighter. It is harder to fight as an outside fighter in this game because judging distance is a lot more difficult. And I find that when you get too close to your opponent, you kind of stick to them almost. It's an unusual kind of effect, and again, a lot of the stuff will be hard to demonstrate here. You have to experience it to know what I'm talking about, but when you get close, you kind of stick to your opponent. So staying on the outside is a lot more difficult, and depending on the character you're playing against, they can be very, very aggressive and come forward. You can also see there Usyk's getting a bit of a sunburn on his face, which does look like a sunburn, but it's actually you know, the accumulation punches over time. But it does look a bit ridiculous. I think they kind of need to tone that down a little bit, or at least make it more blotchy so their entire face isn't going red. So yeah, you do have to you know, you do have to really practice judging distance and practice staying on the outside, not getting close to your opponent at all, because you will kind of be sucked in almost, and then you kind of get into that Rock'em Sock'em Robots style that they were complaining about in the reviews. So you can see here that this is actually one of the better fights that I had, to be honest with you. My stamina management isn't fantastic, but it is really, really difficult to manage stamina in this game, and I would consider myself very good at managing stamina, because that's how I fought in Fight Night Champion. I would very rarely leave or finish a match with less than 3/4 stamina. So you can see here I'm using the loose footwork there at the end of that round to kind of move away from Usyk. You press up on the directional pad and that gives you the loose movement option. And that feels and looks pretty good. And you can actually be quite successful with that, catching people moving backwards if you use it effectively and don't overuse it, because if you do get caught when you're using that, it can actually leave you more open. Well, it obviously is going to leave you more open. You're going to take more damage is what I meant to say. So you have to be careful with that as well. But definitely, you know, for somebody who understands boxing and other people who understand boxing as well, you can box a lot more realistically in Undisputed. But in terms of an arcade experience, it's not really there. It's not going to be something you can just dive into and start having success with. So there you can see I knocked down Usyk. And this will give you an opportunity just to see what the knockdown animations actually look like and them getting up. And again, look, doesn't look too bad. Again, there's a lot more work to be done. Kenny Bayless there is the referee. It's nice to see the likeness has been put in. But I suppose that's kind of my main point on the game. And I suppose I just want to finish on this point. Look, I don't want this video to be overly negative. At the end of the day, there's lots of people who shower on this game with praise. It has got issues. And it is a steep learning curve. And by no means am I a pro gamer. I like to sit down and enjoy my game. So there will be a bit of a learning curve involved in this as well for me. But I just kind of want to finish and say, at the moment, the one word I would say to sum up how the game feels when you're playing it is probably inconsistent. As I said, you can have fantastic rounds where you just feel like you are dominating your opponent. And there's even been rounds here where I felt like I was almost back in a more modern version of Fight Night Champion. Dancing around on the outside, throwing jabs and straight right hand combinations, and then closing the distance and doing damage up close. But again, they're few and far between, and they're kind of marred then by other rounds where your opponent is spamming the body and other issues like that. Now, if you go and play online, obviously you're not going to have that same experience, but I'm assuming a lot of people are going to want to probably jump on and play offline first and get a bit of experience before they try and get, you know, trounced by people online or people who've been playing way too much of the game, which, you know, we experience in every single game that we play. But that would be my kind of mini review. I'm not a reviewer, as you can probably tell, but that was what I would think. That's my kind of thoughts as a former Fight Night Champion player. So we got the decision there. I don't know what Martin Clark has been sniffing, but I'd like some of what he has, because he somehow gave that to Usyk. But yeah, nice to see the corrupt judging baked into a game as well. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll chat to everybody soon.